The classroom fell silent the moment the teacher slammed the test onto the desk. Every student turned as her cold voice cut through the air. A quiet boy stood frozen while laughter spread like a slow infection. His ears burned. His hands trembled. In that humiliating moment, something inside him changed forever. The teacher forgot the incident within days. The boy never forgot it for a single second. Years later, fate placed her life directly into his hands. And when their eyes met again, the real shock had only just begun. The classroom smelled of chalk, dust, and old wood. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows. Gray light pooled across the floor like spilled water. Evan sat in the last row, still, silent, almost invisible. His notebook was perfectly aligned with the edge of the desk. Every letter he wrote was neat enough to belong inside a printed book. Yet no one ever looked at it. No one ever looked at him. Except Mrs. Alden. Her heels struck the floor with sharp authority as she paced between the desks. She believed discipline built strong minds. She believed silence meant weakness. And Evan was always silent. That morning, the class buzzed with restless energy. Exams had been returned. Some students celebrated. Some groaned. Mrs. Alden stopped beside Evan's desk. Her shadow covered his paper. She lifted his test with 2 fingers as if it were something fragile, or something unpleasant. "Well," she said loudly, "let us all see what hiding in the back of the room produces." Heat rushed into Evan's ears. 30 heads turned at once. The room grew smaller. Air felt heavier. Mrs. Alden held the paper high. A perfect score. Red ink circled the number. Yet her lips tightened instead of smiling. "Interesting," she said. "Because a student who never speaks usually has nothing inside to say." Soft laughter moved through the class. It brushed across Evan's skin like cold wind. Mrs. Alden leaned closer. "Stand up." His chair scraped loudly as he obeyed. His knees felt hollow. "Explain question 7 to the class." Words gathered inside him, but they tangled. His throat closed. Seconds stretched. The ticking clock became thunder. Mrs. Alden sighed dramatically. "You see?" She turned to the students. Memorization without intelligence. Laughter grew louder this time. Someone whispered, "Robot." Evan stared at the grain of his desk. It blurred. Mrs. Alden dropped the test onto his surface. "Sit down when you are ready to participate like a human being." The bell rang moments later. Freedom for everyone except Evan. He moved through the hallway like a ghost. Lockers slammed. Shoes squealed against tile. The smell of cafeteria pizza made his stomach twist. He went home without speaking to anyone. That night, he packed his books carefully. Then he placed the test at the bottom of a drawer. He never showed his parents. The next weeks passed quietly, quieter than before. Evan stopped raising his hand completely, stopped making eye contact, stopped trying. Winter arrived early that year. Snow erased the color from the town. One Monday morning, his desk sat empty. Mrs. Alden noticed. She marked him absent without hesitation. Days became weeks. A counselor mentioned that his family had relocated suddenly. No farewell. No explanation. Mrs. Alden forgot his name before spring. Years flowed onward. Students graduated. Faces blurred into memory. The school replaced its wooden desks with plastic ones. Mrs. Alden's hair turned silver at the edges. Her voice softened with age, yet her posture remained rigid. Retirement arrived on a bright June afternoon. Applause echoed in the auditorium. Flowers filled her arms. She smiled for photographs. For the first time in decades, tomorrow held nothing scheduled. Silence unsettled her. Weeks later, a persistent ache began in her chest. At first, she ignored it. Then it deepened. Breathing became work. Her daughter insisted on a hospital visit. The building smelled sharply of antiseptic. White lights hummed overhead. Machines whispered in steady rhythms. Mrs. Alden lay on a narrow bed, wrapped in stiff sheets. Fear crept slowly into her thoughts. Age had finally caught her. Footsteps approached outside the curtain. Measured. Calm. The curtain slid open. A tall man stepped inside. His coat was spotless. A stethoscope rested against his collarbone. His expression was composed, yet his eyes held something unreadable. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Alden," he said. His voice was low, controlled, familiar in a distant way. She studied his face. Recognition flickered but did not ignite. He checked her chart, listened to her lungs. His hands were steady, professional. Then he said, "Do you remember a student named Evan Gray?" The name drifted through her mind like fog. A faint image appeared. Last row. Quiet boy. perfect test. She shifted uneasily. Yes, perhaps. He met her gaze fully now. I am Evan. The air left her chest in a shallow gasp. Time folded sharply. She saw the classroom again. The raised paper. The laughter. His silence. You, she whispered. You changed. So did you, he replied gently. A long stillness followed. The heart monitor traced bright green peaks beside her bed. Each beep sounded louder than the last. I never forgot that day, Evan said. His tone carried no anger. That unsettled her more than fury would have. I was 12. I already struggled to speak in front of people. After that morning, I stopped speaking almost entirely. Guilt prickled across her skin. I was strict, she murmured. You were precise, he said. Precise enough to teach me something important. She swallowed hard. What was that? That silence forces observation. Observation reveals patterns. Patterns save lives. He adjusted the machine beside her. Numbers flickered. Her pulse jumped. You became a doctor, she said softly. Yes. Another pause settled between them. Heavy. Then Evan's eyes shifted toward the window. Night had fallen without her noticing. The glass reflected the room like a dark mirror. Mrs. Alden, he continued, there is something you should understand about your condition. Cold crept into her fingertips. The pain in your chest is not ordinary. He lifted a scan from the chart. Black and white shadows formed an unfamiliar landscape. There is a growth near your heart. Her mouth dried instantly. Is it dangerous? Yes. The single word landed with crushing weight. She gripped the sheet. Can you treat it? Evan held her gaze. Steady. Unblinking. I am the only surgeon available tonight who has performed this procedure successfully. Relief tried to rise, but something in his expression stopped it halfway. The faintest tremor passed through his jaw. I should tell you, he said. The operation is extremely delicate. One wrong movement. He let the sentence finish itself inside her imagination. A chill traveled down her spine. The monitor quickened. You trust me, do you not? Evan asked quietly. The question felt heavier than it should have. Images rushed through her mind. A boy standing while classmates laughed. Her own voice echoing. Participate like a human being. She realized her hands were shaking. Yes, she whispered. I trust you. Evan studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Good, he said. Because in a few minutes, I will be holding your heart in my hands. The room seemed to tilt. The steady beep sharpened into a piercing sound. He stepped toward the door, then paused. Without turning back, he added, Do you know what I learned after leaving your class? Her voice barely existed. What? That humiliation is a powerful teacher. It can destroy a person, or it can carve them into something precise. At last, he looked over his shoulder. And tonight, Mrs. Alden. His eyes reflected the cold hospital light. You will discover exactly which kind of teacher I became. Mrs. Alden watched the operating room lights blur as fear tightened around her chest. The steady sound of the heart monitor reminded her that her life now depended on the boy she once humiliated. Evan stood across the room, his face calm, almost unreadable behind the surgical mask. For the first time in her life, she understood what true helplessness felt like. As the anesthesia slowly pulled her under, regret echoed louder than the machines. Hours later, her eyes opened to the soft glow of morning light. Evan sat beside her, exhaustion visible, yet the operation had been a success. I chose to save you, he said quietly, because I refused to become the pain you once gave me. Tears slipped down her temples as the weight of his compassion settled in. And in that fragile silence, she realized the quiet student had become far greater than the teacher who once tried to break him.